really believe that wholehearted commitment to God is more important than any other thing or person in life? It's right up here. Do you really believe that wholehearted, complete commitment to God is more important than any other thing or person in our lives? And lastly, we need to ask this question. Do you know that nothing you do in this life will ever matter unless it is about loving God and loving the people He has made? Nothing in this life will ever matter unless it is about loving God and loving the people He has made. Nothing you do in this life will ever matter. And I hope that's good news to you. Not bad. Yes, guys, our life matters. And because our life matters, our worship is paramount. As we see in this story, there are a few things that we can learn about the nature of worship. We all worship, like it or not. We all use worship, or we all get excited about something, and something that tantalizes our senses and enraptures our soul, that defies the effects of death. And one thing we can learn about worship from this guy named Abraham, the father of our faith, is that worship is exclusionary. Worship is exclusionary. God said in the first commandment, worship God alone. You cannot have any other gods before me. In genuine worship, you cannot compromise. You cannot compromise when it comes to genuine worship. I try to discover what the biblical language, what worship literally means if you transliterate it. And worship basically means, plainly put, it means reverence and action. It means reverence and action. Some of you guys were able to see Susan Boyle this past week on the clip of Britain's Got Talent. And if you want to see worship at its finest, watch that clip of Susan Boyle and look at the eyes of Simon and the judges. Worship is exclusionary. They were not thinking about anything else. Even if they had a dying mother or a dying father or a dying child, in that brief moment, they were captivated by Susan Boyle and the song she was singing. Worship is coextensive with life, but I know these thoughts are so abstract, they may mean nothing to you. Let me put it this way, as we see up here. Worship means seeing your life, seeing my life, God's way. That is what worship is. I know we've described it in innumerable ways, but worship, if you break it down, it means seeing life God's way. When you are in full worship of a living God, doesn't your life begin to look different? Your circumstance has not changed one bit, and yet everything looks different. Because worship is about seeing life God's way. Seeing life God's way. As we go into the story, we realize that there is a price for true worship, for spiritual passion. And through this story in Abraham, we realize often in life that we have to return back to God what is rightfully His. We have to return back to God what is rightfully His. You know, I gave a lot of thought to this message. And I thought to myself, you know, when Abraham waited over 25 years to receive Isaac, remember, if you know the story, this dude was like over 70 years old when God told him, you and your wife, Sarah, are going to have a baby. And you know what Sarah did when she heard that they're going to have a baby at over 70? She laughed. She laughed at God. She laughed at the thought. And that's why the name Isaac means laughter. She laughed at the thought of them having a baby. And not only that, furthermore, that this baby would reproduce an entire nation and eventually be the seed of the Messiah, Jesus Christ. Absurdity. Ludicrous. Bonkers. How's that going to happen? We're over 70 years old, God. Are you tripping, God? And I can imagine how hard it was for Abraham to await the promise of the seed of Isaac. But if he thought that was a test, he ain't seen nothing yet. Because I believe the true test of our lives is not to await something that we so eagerly long for. I don't know what it is in your life that you're like, God, I can't wait till it comes. I anticipate it. I dream about it. My mind floats toward that destination. And I tell you, yes, it is a craving that we all have, something that we want. But yet, I think the greater test from this story is that when God gives you what you've been waiting for, can you give it back? That is the real test of life. When God gives you a promotion at your work, when God gives you straight A's, can we give it back? I think that is a much, much more severe test, don't you? I think it is. I am no way patronizing or devaluing Abraham's ability to wait on the Lord. But now that he has held his son in his hands, how could he ever give him up? I remember one pastor friend of mine held his son in his hand at the hospital. And you know what he prayed to the Lord as he was holding his newborn baby in his arms? He prayed such a reverent prayer. He said to the Lord, God, don't let me love this baby more than you. Don't let me love this baby more than you. He understood the true test, the nature of worship and faith. The main idea of this message today is that true worshipers of God, you and I, true worshipers of God, obey and surrender what is dearest to our hearts. We obey and surrender what is dearest to our hearts. Why? Because we trust that God will provide. That is why on Mount Moriah, Abraham said that this is a mountain where God has provided for me. When he substituted Isaac for the ram caught in the thickets. Francis Chan has a book that the praise team and me are finishing up, and I recommend you read it if you ever had the chance. If you cannot afford it, I will buy it for you. And the book is called Crazy Love. And listen to what he says about worship, about our salvation, about our characteristics as modern-day Christians. This is not, if you're sensitive, you don't want to hear this. Listen to what he says. Francis Chan, Chinese dude. He says, let's face it, we're willing to make changes in our lives only if we think it affects our salvation. We're willing to make changes in our lives only if we think it affects our salvation. This is why so many people ask me questions like, can I divorce my wife and still go to heaven? Do I have to be baptized to be a Christian? Am I a Christian even though I'm having sex with my boyfriend or girlfriend? If I commit suicide, can I still go to heaven? If I'm ashamed to talk about Jesus, is he really going to deny me? And he goes on, Francis Chan goes on and says, to me, these questions are tragic because they reveal so much about the state of our hearts. They demonstrate that our concern is more about going to heaven than loving Jesus. Jesus said, if you love me, you will obey what I command. And our question quickly becomes even more unthinkable. Can I go to heaven without truly and faithfully loving Jesus? Can I go to heaven without truly and faithfully loving Jesus?